Hey YouTube, welcome back to the Meta Vault. Today we're going to be doing a brand new deck tech for you. This is blue-green Merfolk in Ixalan Standard. Kicking it off, we're going to start off with 4 copies of Kamina Speaker. Kamina Speaker, it's a 1-drop, doesn't get much better than +1/+1 as long as you control another Merfolk or an island. And we're pretty much always going to control a Merfolk or an island in this deck. So that is just value all the way. Next is going to be 4 copies of Blossoming Defense. Blossoming Defense is going to give your creatures hexproof, and it can act as like a combat trick pump spell for +2/+2. But it's going to be very important that you save these to protect your Herald of the Secret Streams. More on that later. And then also, after some deliberation and playtesting, I've decided to keep 2 copies of Shaper's Sanctuary in the main board. Now, I've heard a lot of things about people saying, no, this is sideboard stuff, yada, yada, yada. Well, the fact of the matter is that there's a whole lot of removal in this format. And you're going to run into situations where you have removal on the board versus when you don't a lot more often. So I think that the 2 Shaper Sanctuary is a good compromise. It lets you get a lot of value and draw cards for when your creatures are removed to try to replace them. Okay, so next, in the 2-drop slot, we're going to be running the 4 copies of the Metallic Mimic. The Mimic is really awesome for anything tribal, but specifically for Merfolk, where the whole point of this deck is going to be to make +1/+1 counters. The Metallic Mimic is excellent because all of your Merfolk that come out after you've boarded a Metallic Mimic are going to have a +1/+1 counter, which is excellent. After that, we're going to have 4 copies of River Sneak. River Sneak can't be blocked. And whenever another Merfolk enters the battlefield under your control, you're going to get +1/+1 till end of turn. It's an awesome 2-drop, and in this deck, it lets you start getting damage and pressure on the opponent early, which is excellent. This way, you're buying yourself some time, essentially, to put some damage on the board until you can go ahead and get yourself some more Merfolk with some counters on them, and you can board your Herald of Secret Streams. After that, we have 4 copies of Deeproot Champion. Now, this is a 4 of. I tried playing with a 2 of, a 3 of. This is a 4 of card for this deck because in this specific build right here for the main board, we're going to have, let's see, it's going to be 6, 10, 11 non-creature spells, but our entire sideboard is non-creature spells. So depending on what our matchup is, this will get even better. But this guy right here, he gets a counter whenever you cast a non-creature spell. It's more along the counters theme, and these guys can get very big by the end of the game. I've had no problem with him hitting 5/5 or 6/6 if he lives by the end of the game. And that's pretty much on par with the Long Tusk Cub for price and everything else. This is pretty much right here. This in the 3-drop slot, Deeproot Waters. We're running 4 of this. It's an uncommon enchantment. Whenever you cast a Merfolk spell, you're going to create a 1/1 blue Merfolk creature token with hexproof. This is the backbone of the deck. This is what you need to get out every single time, or you want to try to, because it's going to let you go really, really wide. And this deck really wants to go wide. Plus, if you've got a Metallic Mimic on the board, you know, these are going to come out as 2/2 hexproofs, which is absolutely nothing to smirk at. Next, we have 3 copies of Vineshaper Mystic, and when it enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target Merfolk you can control. So it's a 1/3, a 2/4 if you put one of the counters on it. And it's good, but this will probably be one of the ones that we sideboard out when we need to. But it just has synergy for the rest of the deck. So your next card, it's a 2 of, Kopala, Warden of Waves. It's a legendary creature, so that's why we're running 2 of, because we don't want to get flooded out with these things. But it's a 2/2 for 3, but what it's going to let you do is protect the rest of your Merfolk, because spells your opponents cast, the target of Merfolk you control costs 2 more to cast. Same thing with abilities. So this guy is great, because when you get him out on the board, it's going to make your opponent, you know, really guess whether or not they want to play that Abrade or whatever else, right? Or that Lightning Strike. Because if you force them to pay, you know, 4 mana for a Lightning Strike, and then you Blossoming Defense for 1, they're going to start wigging out really fast. Your next card, Herald of the Secret Streams. Okay, so this is the other backbone card of your deck, because when you have it on the board, creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them can't be blocked. A couple things to note with this guy. If you swing in with him or anything else like that, be mindful that the opponent can essentially alpha strike, remove this card, and all of your other creatures that have counters on them can now be blocked. So something to think about. You're going to want to protect him at all costs. That's why we have some more defensive 1-drops in the sideboard and the Blossoming Defense's main board, is because we need to keep this guy up at all costs. Now, one thing I have found is that playing him, maybe turn 4 isn't always that feasible, because your opponent might have removal in hand or whatever else. So be really mindful of your opponent's mana when you go to cast this guy out, because he's an instant counter target or removal target. But there we go. So then the top end of our deck here, real simple, 1 copy of Vanquisher's Banner. If we get it out, it's an Anthem effect, +1/+1, and we draw a card whenever we cast one of these creatures. It's excellent. It's good value. There's only space for one of these things, and when I play tested a bunch of stuff, I did stuff with bombs. Like I even tried putting in Carnage Tyrant. Tishana just is not there. Pretty much everything that was higher cost didn't run well with the deck, and it made it clunky. I tried running Nissa. It was clunky. Really what you want to be focusing on in this deck is you want to be playing spells every turn. You want to get your Deep Root Waters up. You're going to want to get Merfolk on the board. You're going to want to be cognizant of where and when you play your Merfolk, because you're going to want to get as many secondary effects out of Deep Root Waters or Deep Root Champion or whatever else that you can to build your board state up. You want to go really wide, but you also want to be constantly building your team up with counters. So I tried this a number of different ways. This is one of the main reasons I wanted to do the video, because a lot of the other people I've seen that have done Merfolk videos or deck techs are not really taking into account that anything on the higher end of the curve, unless you're kind of ramping, it isn't really that feasible with this specific style of this deck, because this is you trying to race your opponent. You're trying to get in as much unblockable damage as fast as possible, and that's it. So we're just concentrating on the basics and what we want to do. Now, for the sideboard. First off, this is a little bit, the only controversial thing I think that's in here is 4 copies of Crushing Canopy. Now, this easily could have been Unnatural Appetite for artifact removal also. However, what I've found so far is that it's nice to have flying removal spell to take out copies of Glorybringer, more so than it was to have Destroy Artifact. Now, you can go back and forth on this. Maybe I'll change it later. But you're either going to want essentially this or 4 copies of Unnatural Appetite for the Unnatural from Kaladesh, because this is what's going to let you deal with some of the removal in the format. Like if you hit a blue-white control list or something like that, a lot of the removal that is going to hit you is enchantments, or some of the effects that people are trying to build up to win with their deck is enchantment based. So you need enchantment hate in your sideboard. Now, 4 copies of Dive Down. We're going to use this just like Blossoming Defense. Cards we can sub out for this, it would be like Vineshaper Mystic. We could switch out the Shaper Sanctuary, just all depending. But these copies of Dive Down, specifically against like Ramanop Red, is very important, because you're going to get hit with a lot of removal, and you're going to have a way to keep your stuff on the board, especially your Herald of Secret Streams. Otherwise, you are not going to win to something like really aggressive like Ramanop Red. So there's that. Now we have 4 copies in the gate. This goes without saying. This is actually a couple things. So I wouldn't use these as removal counters. That's what your Blossoming Defense, your Dive Downs, or whatever else is for. This is what we're going to sub in specifically to try to protect ourselves from sweepers. Because what this deck is very, very vulnerable to is sweepers. So Settle the Wreckage, was it the Sweltering Sun, any of that kind of stuff. It's a quick way to lose if your opponent gets something out that's going to like ping all your creatures or do whatever to your entire board state, because we're working very hard to keep this board state going. And when we gas out because our opponent's taken everything, it's very hard to recover and bounce back from. So this essentially is your anti-sweeper tech. This is what you're using to protect your board. So when you get these in hand, you keep them up. You're not keeping it up to counter something, to counter like your Herald. You're keeping this up to protect against Settle the Wreckage or something else like that. And then last, we have Perilous Voyage. This is for, I don't know, aggro-based decks, things they're going to be playing like Hydras or Glorybringers or whatever else. This is going to allow you to bounce something back to your opponent's hand, or in an aggro deck where you're trying to race them, you can even play this turn 2 to bounce whatever it is they have on the board back, and then scry 2 to help filter your deck. But this is just a nice little piece of, I guess, options for you when you're playing against another fast, aggressive deck. Now, this easily could have been something like the Lifegiver's Boon or whatever it is that gives +1/+1 counters to your Merfolk, but I really like Perilous Voyage. It gives you a little bit more control over the opponent and makes it a little bit more interactive, because this is not a very interactive deck. We don't really care what the other person's doing. We're trying to get our stuff out on the board and to basically go as wide as we can, as fast as we can. So it's kind of like in between like an aggro deck and a weenies deck, but some of your creatures can get actually very big. Okay, and then finally with our lands, we're running 4 copies of Unclaimed Territory, 4 copies of Botanical Sanctum, and then we are running 8 copies of Islands and 8 copies of Forests. And that's going to put us at a total of 24 lands. And what I found is that mana curve works really good. I don't know about going up or going down on that. I think it's pretty firm that you're going to want the 24 lands with this kind of breakout. I don't think you need to go for any more dual lands or anything else like that. The Unclaimed Territories come in pretty good for your Merfolk, but remember that they're only good for casting Merfolk. Now, one thing about this deck is it's kind of a hybrid between the other Merfolk decks. We are not running a ton of Merfolk. We're running 25. That being said, so 25 Merfolk, we're kind of on the in-between scale, because a lot of other people that I see that are running this are running a minimum of 26. So we're running less Merfolk because we want to have more access to some tricks and options and so forth. And this card right here is the other thing that I've seen that's come up. Deeper Waters, you don't want to run 3 of this, you want to run 4. This will win you the game every single time when you get this out and you can get these counters going. Because especially if you get this out, the earlier the better. You are going to make a ton of hexproof Merfolk creature tokens that can very easily just get out of control fast. I think the 2 times that I boarded this last weekend, I got 8 tokens out of it each game. It's super good. I mean, this is an absolute 4 of, no switching in and out. You can rotate out these other cards. You want 4 of these no matter what. Alright guys, I hope you like the deck tech. This is the first one of the deck techs that I've done. I'd like to do more in the future, but this is what I'm running right now. So far, I've piloted this in various iterations at an FNM and a Standard Showdown, and I did okay at the FNM. I won 2 out of the 4 matches, but it needed a lot of work. It got a lot more work, a lot more of the cards it needed, and then I did take second place at the Standard Showdown and win some packs. And I'm hoping that this is going to be even better going forward, because now it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's finished, at least for now, and I'm very happy with the way that this turned out. So hopefully this will be one of the main decks that I'm piloting throughout this rotation. Alright guys, take care. See you next time. Thanks for watching.